When it comes to the American dream of homeownership, the Biden administration has been fighting against what it calls junk fees, which are some of the charges you incur in closing costs. But they fail to mention the enormous government taxes that are a massive cost to both home buyers and sellers. Joining us now to discuss this is the president of the National Taxpayers Union, Pete Sepp. Good morning, Pete. Thanks for joining us this morning. Big government profiting, you say, the most off the backs of hardworking home-owning Americans and to those who hope to buy a home one day. So tell us, what are the facts?
Well, as much as the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau struggles to try and lay the blame for high closing costs and high home ownership costs on the private sector, it's really the public sector that's driving it. When you take a look at the average total closing costs, the points that you might pay, the credit report fees, all of it, 44% of the total is government taxes. If they want to do something about making home ownership more affordable, policymakers should be looking at themselves in the mirror.
Yeah, and this is government, you say, trying to deflect the high tax costs by talking about all these other fees when those fees don't even come close to what's collected, even after a home is purchased through property taxes. I was reading right here that property taxes rose 24% between the first quarter of 2020 and the first quarter of 2024. It rose nearly 16% between the first quarter of 2022 and, again, 2024. Again, all during the Biden administration. We're talking about property taxes rising double digits. What do you make of these numbers?
Property taxes are very curious in that they are counter-cyclical economically, meaning that even if the economy is doing poorly, property taxes rise. If there's inflation, property taxes rise. If people can't afford to stay in their homes, doesn't matter. Property taxes rise inexorably. In fact, of the major taxes, I'm talking about income, sales taxes, property taxes are the type of tax that rise almost no matter what the outside economy is doing. That's what makes it especially sinister for homeowners who are just living on the edge of affordability for their mortgage payments. Suddenly, in a year or two, you could be paying 10% more in property tax, and you can't afford it.
Yeah, and CFPB is the government agency that's been tasked with sort of looking at what it says are junk fees. And one complaint they had is the total cost of the loan, which we know has risen because homeowners want to buy down the points because of those high interest rates. And yet those high interest rates are a result of inflation, which, of course, was made measurably worse by excessive government spending. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly. So points are what homeowners pay to try and buy down the interest rate, make the loan a little bit more affordable over the long term. And CFPB rightly says, well, part of the big increase in closing costs is more homeowners paying points. What they don't do is connect the dots to government policies that have made inflation worse, as you say. The Inflation Reduction Act, a poorly named piece of legislation, the American Rescue Plan Act. The Congressional Budget Office took a look at these pieces of legislation and said, yes, there is a contribution to the inflation rate that this excessive government spending made, and we're all paying the price for it.
We know that VP Kamala Harris right now is trying to sort of separate herself from the Biden administration, even though we know it's the Biden-Harris administration. Do we know anything about the economic plan of VP Harris, who claims that she is now focused on trying to make home affordability a priority?
Well, the vice president says, at least hints through her staff, that some kind of tax credit might be proposed to help homeowners afford their initial down payment and mortgage. I think the problem, though, is much deeper than that. It's the attitude of governments. You can't deduct your private mortgage insurance on the federal level. Transfer taxes at the state level, very high. Local recordation taxes in some areas of the country run $4,500. That's insane.
That is insane.
It's got to be pulled back.
Yeah. So PMI, you could write that off until, what, 2022? That's been more of a recent thing you couldn't write off. That was during the administration, the Biden-Harris administration, where they got rid of being able to write off the PMI on your real estate. All right. President of the National Taxpayers Union, Pete Sepp, great to see you as always. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure.